So I just got done reading book number 2 in the Madras Family series, and this book is called Whispered Promises, and this deals with Dex and Caitlin. It sheds light on their story and their situation and what all happened between them. And it was such a pleasure to find out what exactly happened between them, because as we know it, all we know is that Dex had someone that he fell in love with very quickly, and she just gives back her wedding ring and sends him divorce papers. And we didn't really know the details and the background as to how that all is happened and how that acquired to be. So this is what this book is dealing with. Now, just to give you a rundown of Caitlin, her name is Caitlin Parker. And at the time when she met Dex, they were 11 years in the age gap, age difference. She's 11 years younger. So at the time when she met Dex, she was 21 and he was 32. So her name is Caitlin Parker. Now, she is from San Antonio, Texas, and she graduated from the University of Texas with a degree in computer technology, and she was a minor in accounting, and she had been part of a work-study program on her campus working in the computer department. So she's kind of tech savvy. Now, her mother died of a ruptured appendix, and her father, who was Houston Parker, he's sick and he's dying. He's on his deathbed, basically. Now, she wasn't aware of how severe his health was, the decline of his health was, because he gave her the impression that he was doing well. So that's a little background on her. Now, she is the only child. She doesn't have any nieces, nephews, uncles, aunties, cousins, no relatives. It's just her mother, and her father. But when her mother got sick, that left her and her father. They became very, very close, and they are all that they had. Just them. Now, it starts off with Caitlin. She's in the hospital, and she's visiting her father. She is kind of like caught off guard because she didn't even know her father was sick, because every time that she would talk to him, he seemed fine. Now, she was in San Antonio, but when her father found out in the beginning stages that he was sick, he encouraged his daughter, Caitlin, to accept a job offer in Fort Worth, Texas. So he convinces her and kind of pushes her to accept that job. And she, knowing how her father is, she was kind of like suspicious of that, because he loved being around his daughter. He always wanted to have her close. It's because that's all he had was her. So she was kind of suspicious when he kind of like encouraged her to go all the way to Fort Worth, Texas, instead of staying in San Antonio with her dad. But she didn't think too much of it. She didn't give a fuss about it, because she wanted to accept the job because it was something that she wanted to do. So she does that. So now she goes to back to San Antonio, and she discovers that her dad is sick. She goes in there, she sees the state that he's in, and she's like, oh my gosh, he looks horrible. He had lost so much weight, and he just kind of went downhill. So the doctor was explaining to her that he had lung cancer, but the cancer spread so fast, he just dwindled down pretty quickly, and he's down to his final stages. And that's why he didn't want his daughter to know until it got down to the final stages. That was his orders to the doctors, not to notify the daughter until it got to the end. So basically, that's where we are. And so he's lying there, and he's talking to his daughter, and he's saying, look, I want you to get in touch with Dex. Now, she has not been in touch with Dex for 4 years, okay? No contact, no interaction, don't know how he's doing, none of that. Hadn't talked to him in 4 years. Now, the reason is because when she met Dex, she was young, she was 21, and they had only been together 2 weeks before he proposed to her. And they went off and they got married or whatever. So they didn't, all they knew was that they were in love and they had this strong attraction. So that's all they knew, but they didn't really know each other. But when her father got wind of her getting married to Dex and discovering that Dex was 11 years older than her and that she was going to be going away, her father kind of encouraged her to choose between her husband or her father. Her father was putting in her head, look, you're all I got. I want you to stay near me, close to me. Your mother is not around. I just really need you. You need to choose either me or your husband. And of course, she chose her father because she always has been there for her father. They have been close. So why not? Why wouldn't she choose her father? And besides, she really didn't know this man. She was only with this man for 2 weeks. And then he tells her, look, my job is sending me to Australia. I have to go to Australia for a job offer and I want you to come with me. And she said that she would come with him, but then her father just discouraged her and she decided to send him his wedding ring back, the divorce papers, and a Dear John note saying that she's sorry she couldn't go with him to Australia. And that was that. They didn't speak anymore since then. So now it's been 4 years and her father wants his daughter to get in touch with Dex. There's something that he wants to talk to Dex about. So she was like, okay, well, I'm going to honor your request. She said, I'll try the best I can to my ability to get in contact with Dex. I don't know how that's going to go, but she said she'll do it. The man is dying. So then it gets to her calling Dex. Now at first, Dex was sitting there having lunch with Clayton at this restaurant called Sisters. And Clayton, he was just checking. They catch up sometimes and they sit there and they have lunch. And he was just trying to set his brother up with different women and things like that. And Dex would always decline. And Clayton was kind of teasing him about, you're not over Caitlin. And, Dex would say, no, that's not the reason. I just like to work. I'm not thinking about no other woman or anything like that, which in the back of his mind he really was, but he didn't want to admit that to his brother that even after 4 years, he was still thinking about his wife. Now, don't get me wrong. During that time, he had slept with other women, but nothing more than that. He had a few casual flings or whatever, but nothing serious. So his brother Clayton is just trying to see where he's at. And so, of course, with Clayton questioning him about his old feelings about Caitlin, of course, he's sitting there replaying his feelings and that dreadful day of him receiving the wedding ring back from her, the Dear John letter, and just her leaving him and not coming with him to Australia like he had wanted his wife to do. So that resurfaces the memories on how they met or whatever. And so they're sitting there, Dex is sitting there with his brother Clayton, and then it begins to unfold the story on how they met. Now, how they met is very interesting. She, at the time, she was looking for a job, and she had heard about this job becoming available because they needed a computer programmer or something as the such, which she went to school for that. So that was right up her alley. She goes for this interview, and the interview is supposed to be Jake Madras, which is Dex's uncle. But Jake, for some reason, he wasn't going to be able to interview her. So Dex decided to go ahead and do the interview on behalf of him. So um, when he goes into the restaurant and he sees Caitlin sitting there, and immediately he was attracted to her. But, she looked pretty young. He's 32, she's 21. So he immediately noticed how beautiful she was. Now she is described as, how is she described? She is described as being, I believe she's 5'5". She has this nice shapely figure. She has light complected skin, beautiful smile, nice beautiful hair, just gorgeous. And of course, he is described as being tall with these charcoal gray colored eyes and these nice features. He looks beautiful. He's a beautiful looking man. And immediately she's attracted to him as well. And when he's sitting there, he was like, "Oh, hi, I'm filling in for my Uncle Jake. He was supposed to interview you, but I'm going to go ahead and interview you." And he's just sitting there. He's interviewing her for the job and position. And he was trying to explain to her, my uncle is kind of ancient when it comes to, he's used to doing things on paper. That old system he's not used to. He's not computer savvy. So she would have her work cut out for her if she wanted to kind of like come in and revamp the whole business or the way that he operated things or did things concerning when it came to documents and things as such. He was just used to doing it more manually than being tech savvy. So the job description is kind of big shoes to fill, but she feels like she's able to do it or whatever, to come in and kind of like revamp his old ways and thinking, the system, the old system of running, how he runs his business. He keeps everything in folders and stuff like that. So she's got a work cut out for her, but she doesn't mind it. And she's just sitting there, being interviewed by this beautiful man, and she's nervous. And I think she ended up asking him how old he was, and I think he told her 32. And, she's just curious about him. And he's attracted to her, but he was like, "Oh, she's 21. So anyways, some time goes on. She gets the job, of course, and she's working there. And, she's just showing interest in Dex, but Dex is not really too fazed by it. I mean, he likes her, but, he didn't want to let it on or let it be known that he really was into her. Now, when Clayton, everybody who sees Caitlin, they automatically say this woman is drop dead gorgeous. So when his brother Clayton says, "Hey man, I need to ask you, are you interested in Caitlin?" He was like, "No, why?" He's like, "Well, I mean, if you're really sincere about that, then I want to take my shots at her." And of course, when Clayton is interested in Caitlin, he was like, "Nah, man, nah, man." So that's when he decided, okay, I'm going to go ahead and step it up because I know what Clayton's trying to do. And besides, I am attracted to her. So anyways, they fall in love. 2 weeks in, they get married. And there you have it. So he was replaying on how they met or whatever. Now, so of course, Caitlin has to get in contact with Dex because her father wants to speak to Dex. So this is how she gets in contact with Dex or get reunited with Dex. So anyways, she calls him up. And Dex is kind of like caught off guard by her phone call. He was like, he's in shock. But in the same token, he's kind of like angry. How you just going to call me out of the blue after 4 years? What do you want? And she was like, "Look, my father is requesting to see you. He's terminally ill. He's really ill, and he wants to see you." And he was like, "I don't know what he wants to see me for. He's the one that really didn't too much like me. Why would I want to go see him even though he's ill?" And she was just saying, please, like he's basically almost dead. Can you just please come see what he wants? So Dex, being the man that he is, he said, okay, I'll be there. So he flies out there to see her father. And immediately when he sees her, of course, it has been some time. She's now 25 and he is now 36. So a lot has changed. At the time when he met her, she had this little girly look. She wasn't really filled out or whatever. Her figure wasn't really popping like it is now. And he's like, okay, wow, she's looking good. Time has done her well. And she's thinking the same thing as far as how Dex look. But when he sees her, he begins to get angry. Like, it was just a number of feelings he was going through because, you left me and I didn't hear anything from you. But they're trying to set this aside, and he gets there and he hugs her or whatnot. And she said, okay, well, we can just go ahead and go to my father's room so we can get this over with. Because she could tell that he was kind of like, okay, I'm ready to just get this over with. So they go into the room or whatever. And so she goes by her father's bedside and she says, Daddy, Dex is here. And so the father is just trying everything within his strength to get the strength to open up his eyes now that he sees Dex standing beside him. And so he looks over and he says, oh, I'm so glad you're here, Dex. He said, I want to apologize to you. And Dex is like, apologize to me about what? He was like, I just want to apologize to you for kind of discouraging Caitlin from choosing you. He was like, okay. And he was like, well, what are you talking about? He was like, I kind of encouraged Caitlin to not marry you. It wasn't her own decision, and I wanted to apologize to you for that. He was like, okay. He said, also, I want you guys to know that technically you guys are still married. He said, excuse me? I signed some divorce papers, and she asked for a divorce and gave back the ring, and I signed the divorce papers and mailed them off. He said, Caitlin's father said, yeah, I know that, but I told the attorneys that Caitlin had changed her mind, and I didn't proceed with the papers for this divorce to be final. He was like, oh gosh, so you deceived us, making us think that we were divorced when in all actuality, all this time, we actually are still married. He was like, I know, I'm sorry. I'm very, very sorry. He said, I just want to tell you this before I go. Like, I'm sorry, and I'm asking for your forgiveness. And he said, not only that, I want you to promise me that you'll take care of Caitlin. So, Dex is, with the condition of this man that he's looking at, he's like, okay, gosh, this man is dying. I don't want him to die thinking that I had something against him or his daughter. So he said, look, I accept your apology. I forgive you. And yes, I will take care of your daughter. And when he heard those words, Caitlin's dad heard those words, he kind of like was at rest and at peace. It was kind of like he was holding on to get that off of his chest. And once Dex promised that he would take care of his daughter and look after his daughter, he died. But before he died, he kind of like, when Dex was holding his hand, Caitlin's father's hand, Houston Parker's hand, he had a note in his hand, or a letter in his hand, and he handed it to Dex. And Dex kind of like put it in his pocket, and he really didn't want to read it or whatever until later. So he takes his last breath, and of course he watches Caitlin kind of like sob uncontrollably over the loss of her father or whatever. So he's feeling bad, and he's like, okay, darn, this girl just lost her dad, and I'm still trying to be bitter and angry and hold a grudge over what she did 4 years ago. So he's trying his best to be there for her. So she kisses her dad and says her goodbyes to him, and they get in the car. And she was like, okay, the act is over. You can take me home or whatever. He was like, no, I meant that. I promised your dad that I would take care of you, and I'm going to take care of you. And she was like, great. She said, I need to tell you about Jordan. So immediately when he heard the name Jordan, he was like, oh gosh, she's trying to sit here trying to explain to me about some dude. How come her dude Jordan didn't come to the hospital and I'm here at the hospital? Like, he must not be about anything. And so immediately she can tell that this Negro is jealous because she's bringing up Jordan. And she was trying to explain who Jordan was, but he wouldn't let her. So before she could explain, he kind of like drove off. And he dropped her off at home, and he was just letting her know in so many words that he was jealous, because he was like, well, now that you're dropped off, I'm sure Jordan can look after you now. I guess you don't need me to be around. And she wanted to tell him, but she noticed how angry he was and his whole demeanor or whatever, how it was changing. She just gets out of the car and she goes in the house without explaining who Jordan was. And he's sitting in the car. And he was like, maybe it's something to this Jordan that she's not telling me. Maybe she needs to tell me something. Maybe she needs to warn me something about this Jordan. So even though he was angry, he decided to follow her and go in the house. And when he goes in the house, he's just looking around or whatever. And she was like, I was trying to explain, there's something that you need to know about Jordan. And he was like, what? What? And she was taking her precious time. And as she was taking her precious time, he happened to glance over and see this photograph of Caitlin and this little girl. And he was like, oh, who is this little girl? Like, he knew, because the little girl is a splitting image of him. This little girl has his eyes, a lot of his features. And so he was like, this girl looks a lot like me. And he started doing math in his head, because she looked to be about 3. And he was like, who is this little girl? And she said, that's Jordan. So at this point, he was like, oh my God, wait a minute. Let me get this straight. I have a daughter? We have a daughter? And she was like, yes, that's what I was trying to tell you about Jordan, but you got angry and upset. And he couldn't deny that it wasn't his, because the girl looked just like him. And he was like, oh, wow, I'm sorry. And then he started getting angry. Well, he said, well, she's beautiful, but then he started getting angry, like, how come you didn't tell me I had a child all these years, and I'm out here separated from you, and we're divorced, thinking we're divorced, and you have this baby, and you didn't even tell me that I had a child out here? I'm not that type of man who would be fatherless. Like, I would be very much involved had you told me. And she was like, look, Negro, I sent you a letter. He was like, what letter? She said, I sent you a letter explaining to you that you had a daughter. He was like, oh, well, I didn't get no letter. And he kind of like don't believe her, but he can't deny that this girl looks just like him. And they were married and they were having relations. So he was like, okay, well, where is she? And Caitlin was like, well, she's with a babysitter right now, and she won't be back till later. He was like, okay. And she said, and by the way, I told her all about you. She knows all about you. And he was like, wow. He said, Jordan's a really interesting name. She said, yeah, that's your middle name. I named her after you. And so he was like, oh, wow, darn. He was so mad he didn't realize that this child is named after him. And he started feeling a little bit bad, like, dang. And he kind of halfway believed her, but he kind of didn't when she said, I told our daughter all about you. It's not like she doesn't know that she has a father or nothing like that. I told her everything about you. And he was like, what did you tell her? That I didn't want to be in her life, or what? I left you, I abandoned you. She was like, no, I told our daughter that you went off to Australia for a job offer and that one day you'll be back. And she told their daughter everything about him. He didn't believe it. So she said, look, I'm exhausted. I don't have time for this. I want to rest. And he said, yes, you probably should do that. She said, you can let yourself out. He was like, no, I'm going to stay here. Now that I know that I have a daughter, I'm going to stay here and take care of you like, your dad asked me to do. She said, well, don't you have a job and business to run? He was like, don't worry about that. My partner is going to take care of that while I take care of this here. So don't worry about that. I can stay as long as I want. He said, I'm not going anywhere, so you might as well get used to it. So she goes up there to take a nap. So it's a knock on the door. And of course, it's the babysitter with his daughter, but his daughter is asleep. He takes the daughter and he's just holding her and he's looking at her and he's just shocked. Like he's actually got his daughter in his arms. He's just so shocked at how gorgeous and small and beautiful and tiny she was. It just kind of like melted his heart immediately. There was no question that this was not his daughter. He knew that this was his daughter. And so, of course, after the babysitter leaves, of course, Caitlin did hear all of the commotion. She comes down and she sees that Dex is holding his daughter. And she goes to sit beside him. And, of course, she's talking to him. She's kind of like touched when she sees them together. And he was just saying how she's beautiful to her. And she was like, yeah, she looks just like you. And then she starts moving. The little girl starts moving. He was like, oh my gosh, she's waking up. She was like, it's okay. So she took Jordan in her arms. And when Jordan wakes up, she's a bit confused. And she was like, who is this man? And the mother Caitlin was like, you remember what I was telling you about your dad? She was like, yeah, my daddy name is Dexter Jordan Madras. And so he was like, dang, she did tell this little girl about me, because how would she know that? And she said, and where's your daddy at? She said, Azalea, but she was meaning Australia. She didn't know how to pronounce it. And Caitlin was like, you mean Australia? She was like, yeah. And she said, well, I'd like you to meet someone. She was like, yeah, okay. And she was looking at him, and she said, what's your name? And he said, Dex. She was like, no, your name ain't Dex. That's my daddy's name. And so Caitlin had to explain to her that this is your father. This is your daddy. He's back. He came back from his job. And she was just looking confused. And she was like, are you sure? And she was like, yeah, that's your dad. And so it took her a minute. And then she was just so happy to see him. And then he just totally lost it. He melted in this little girl's arms. And there's an immediate bond that they shared together. It was so beautiful. So they were having their moment. And of course, Caitlin really, really liked this. Like, she still, even after the 4 years, she still is so in love with this man. And so she's just so elated and just so excited about them finally being together. So he plays with his daughter and bond with his daughter, and then it's time to put her to bed. So he gives her a bath and lay her down, and she goes to bed. So they're downstairs and they're talking, and so they're discussing this new revelation that they're actually still married. So of course he said, well, I'm gonna call my brother Clayton, because Clayton is an attorney. and we're going to have this rectified. I'm going to have him come down, and we're going to have this finalized, our divorce finalized. And we're going to go through with this. And that's what they were talking about. And she didn't want to get a divorce. And he didn't want to either, but he was still angry with her, and he wasn't quiet about being upset and angry with her. He was like, you abandoned me, you left me, and why should we stay married? We've already been apart for 4 years. Why not let us just go ahead and finalize it so we can get on with this? And she was like, I sent you a letter, and then when you didn't respond to my letter, I just figured that you didn't want me anymore. She was like, well, how come you didn't fight for me? You didn't come after me. And so, he had something there. He was thinking about it. He was like, yeah, I didn't really go after her. I didn't really come for her. So she has a reason to be kind of angry as well. So they're just sitting there looking stupid and angry and mad at each other. But in the same token, the feelings are still there. The attraction is still there, thick and heavy. And they still love each other. But they're angry. They got too much on it. Well, Dex has a lot on the inside of him. Now, the beautiful thing about Caitlyn, she's ready and willing to put everything in the past because she really loves this man. And she's determined to make him love her back too. He don't trust her no more. He don't believe in her anymore. He just don't. He feels like you abandoned me, and that's that. And he holds grudges out of this world. So, they called it a night. And he calls his brother Clayton and tell him, man, I need you to get over here because, according to Caitlyn's father, we're still married. He never gave the papers to the attorney. And of course, Clayton was like, what? Are you serious? He was like, yeah, man. And he was like, okay, well, I'll be there first thing tomorrow. He comes the first thing the next day, and of course, their daughter ended up going with the babysitter while they talk about, the finalizing the divorce. But Dex kind of has mixed feelings because he's like, okay, I met our daughter. She really likes me, and she already knew about me. And he don't want to be a deadbeat dad. And then he still does have feelings for Caitlyn. So he's kind of like he's coming to this realization or epiphany that we need to go ahead and stay married for the sake of our daughter. And so Clayton comes and he said, well, man, I'm here. And he's so happy to see Caitlyn. And he just noticed how beautiful he is and beautiful she is. She still is. He always liked her. He would always tease her and say, well, I'm the man that you should have married. And of course, Dex, he knows his brother is playing, but he kind of don't like it. So anyways, things get a little bit heated, and Caitlyn decides that she wanted to go check on her daughter with the babysitter. So she leaves, and now it's just Clayton and Dex. And Clayton basically was saying, man, look, I'm team Caitlyn. You have to understand that she was young when y'all married, and y'all barely knew each other. Y'all married after 2 weeks. Can you understand that this woman would choose a man that she's known all her life? Now, she's grew up with her father. Her father's all she had, all she knew. And here you come along. She barely knows you, and you expect for her to leave her father and come with you. And he was like, well, yeah. He was like, man, now who's being the immature one? And so he got to thinking about it. He said, man, look, you need to stop holding a grudge. It's obvious that she still loves you. He said, I could tell she still loves you by the way that she looks at you and all of that, man. Like, let it go, dude. It's not worth it. So he's thinking about this, and he said, just imagine, how we are about our baby sister, their baby sister, Christy. He was saying, how we are. Now just think if our baby sister met a man that was 11 years older then comes home and say, hey, I'm going off to Australia with this guy she barely even knows, but she knows, she's been knowing us all her life. Who would you expect her to choose? And then he got to thinking about that. He was like, man, you're right. Like, I haven't been thinking clearly. Like, the only thing I could think of is her hurting me and leaving me and abandoning me and choosing her father over me. So he was like, man, you're right, you know. And Clayton was just basically telling him, you know, I know you still love her, but you're holding this grudge. So you need to let go of the grudge and just go ahead and give your marriage another try. You have a chance, an opportunity to start over. She explained to you what happened, but it's on you to let it go. And he said, well, basically, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna stay married to her. You're right. So Caitlin comes back in and she was like, okay, well, did you guys work everything out? Is it final? Like, what's the verdict? And Clayton's just looking at his brother. And Clayton said he doesn't want. And then she was like, he doesn't want what? And then Dex says, I decided I don't want to get a divorce. And so Caitlin, she was like, oh my gosh, like, you want to stay married? And he was like, yeah. And so Clayton was like, okay, my work here is done. I'm going to leave on up out of here. It was nice seeing you again, Caitlin. And he patted his brother on the back and he left. And then when his brother left, of course, he needed to talk to Caitlin about it. He was like, yeah, I want to stay for the sake of our daughter. Our daughter deserves a mother and a father, to be brought up in a great family structure, home, with the father there involved. And I'm going to take care of you, and I'm going to take care of my little girl, and I intend on doing that. And so Caitlin's a little bit disappointed because she was hoping that he wanted to stay married to her because he loved her, not so much for the sake of their daughter. So she's just trying to take it any way she can. So she accepts, and she was like, man, I'm just going to get this man to love me eventually. I'm going to get him to care, trust me, and love me again, no matter what it takes, even though it hurts knowing that this man, he can't trust her. He said he would never give his heart to her again. Never. So now she's just like, okay, well, this sucks, but I'm willing to do anything I can to love him with love. And love will conquer all. Love will win. So they go on. And he said, well, since we're married, this is how it's going to be. I want us to be married. I want us to start over. I want us to try to get to know each other and all of that. I want you to treat me as your husband, and I'll treat you as my wife. But he was talking about relations. He wanted to sleep with her. And she wanted to sleep with him too, but not under the circumstances of him only wanting to be with them to make it work for the sake of their daughter. She wanted this Negro to love her. Not, you're not going to sleep with me as a sex object and think that you can have these marital duties that we're going to do, and then there's nothing attached to that. Negro, you crazy. So she's just refusing him when he tries to get intimate with her, and sometimes she can't help it. She almost breaks down every time he tries to sleep with her. But he's a gentleman. He's the type of man that never forced himself on her or tried to pressure her to do something she didn't want to do. And she really greatly appreciated that about him. And he said, look, I'm just going to leave it to you. Like, you know, whenever you're ready, we can do it. We can do it. And she said, okay, well, I know that. She said, I know that you have always been good about respecting me and not pressuring me to do anything that I don't want to do. So this man, he just ends up teasing her to the point where, oh, he would do things to like kind of like call her bluff to see if she's really serious or to see if she will give in. And I don't know how she did it. But there was times when this girl wanted to break down. But anyway, she's remaining strong. They're both remaining strong. But he's not playing with that girl. So anyways, now Dex used to work as one of the head geologist at this place called Remington Oil. Okay. And he was working with this woman named, what is her name? He was working with this woman named Corinthians Avery. Now, Corinthians is, yes, Corinthians as in the Corinthians in the Bible. Her mother named her that. She had two parents who were a minister and a preacher or something like that, and they were obsessed with their favorite biblical scriptures, and they decided to name her after Corinthians as in the Bible. Now, she's 29. She is described as being 5'8". She has this chocolate complexion and skin. Now, she used to have long hair, but recently, she cut her hair to like a chic, short hairstyle. And, you know, it shows her with her best friend. Her best friend is her name is Brianna. She used to be a model or whatever. And she knows how to do makeup really well. So she's doing her friend's makeup because her friend is getting ready to go to this meeting to kind of like seal this deal. Now, Corinthians, she is a top head geologist at Remington Oil. Now, she's done extensive traveling to all corners of the globe. She's worked with a numerous amount of, Scientologists or scientists and researchers. So she's receiving top salary for the work that she does. She's really great at what she does. And her boss, Adam Flynn, is a senior exploration manager for Remington Oil. And they're attending this board meeting, and she's out there and she's nervous and she's kind of like questioning herself, but she knows she's going to get it. But you know how like you have that nervous feeling. So her and her boss were going in there because they wanted to go over the detailed report of some core samples that was located in an isolated area not far from Eagle Pass, Texas. She found some things on this property, and it's worth a lot of money. Come to find out, it's a major oil field that's worth a lot of money. And I mean millions. So they're interested in owning this land and taking over this land so that they can work on these major oil fields and just make buku money. The problem is the land that they want to purchase happens to be Caitlin's father's property. Now, the letter that Caitlin's father handed to Dex in the hospital, he was explaining to Dex that he feels like he's in trouble because this company called Malone Land Developers was threatening him to sell his property, sell his land, because they wanted to take over his land and property so that they can build this major oil company there. And he doesn't want to sell the land that he has because it's been in his family for generations on top of generations, and he wants to keep it that way. So he was telling Dex that he think that the people that was harassing him and threatening him is going to do the same thing with his daughter. So that's another reason why he wanted Dex to take care of his daughter, because they're going to be after her. And so this property that they're interested in is Caitlin's father's property that they're interested in. So they go in, they sign the deal, it's approved, but they have to get Caitlin, now that Caitlin's father's deceased, they have to get her to cooperate to sell this land. So that's what is going to go down pretty soon. But Corinthians, she also used to work with Dex. Now, they were very close. They gained a friendship and a relationship that was like to Dex, he saw her as a little sister. But she secretly fell in love with him. She fell in love with Dex. Dex doesn't have any clue nor idea that this woman is in love with him because she kept quiet about it. And he never led her on to believe that he was interested in anything romantic between them. So when she discovers, they was like, okay, yeah, so you got this project. They called it the Lebo Project or Lebo Project. And they said, not only that, we also have some other people who are going to be working on this assignment as well. And Dex happens to be one of the people that she's going to be working with, like very closely with, like side by side with. So when she gets wind of this and her boss tells her that, she's excited. She haven't seen this Negro in 4 years. She feels like she has matured and grown a lot since the last time she saw him. I think she was like 25. Yeah, 25 when she last saw him. So now she's 29. And she was like, okay. And she heard that he was recently divorced. You know, she heard a little bit about him, but she didn't know how true that was. But she did hear that he went off to get married, but later he went through a divorce and now he's supposedly, allegedly single. This is what she's thinking. She don't know that this man legally has always been married, never got a divorce. So she's thinking that this man is available. He's single. She ain't seen him in 4 years and she's going to take her grabs at him. She said, he's fine. You know, I got a little bit more confidence now. I'm a little bit more older and mature. And she's feeling herself. And so she said, I'm going to take my shot. So she's excited. So she gives him a call at work and, you know, they're discussing this project or whatnot and how they're going to be working close by and all this and that. And he was like, cool, cool, cool. Can't wait to see you. But when he read the letter that Caitlin's father gave to him, he said, there's no way I'm going to leave her with knowing that someone could possibly be harassing her or whatever. And besides, Caitlin did get a phone call with a threat. Now, he overheard the phone call when she got the threat. She failed to tell him, but he went ahead and let her know, hey, I already know about that phone call and I'm already on it. I got some people investigating it right now as we speak. So don't worry. I'm with you. I'm not going to let nothing happen to you. So anyways, and so Corinthians calls her best friend and tells her, you know what, girl, I need you to come out with me because I got something that I got up my sleeve that I'm trying to do. So, of course, Brianna was like, what are you talking about, girl? She was like, just come with me. Can you come out shopping with me? I got something to get. So she takes Brianna to this skimpy lingerie place, right? She was like, what in the world is going on here? She was like, girl, I'm buying something because I'm going to make my move on Dex. I recently just discovered that him and I are going to be working close by, like side by side. Like, oh my gosh, it's been 4 years. He's back in town. He's no longer in Australia. And I'm about to claim my man. I'm about to let him know that I've been in love with him all these years. And Brianna's just looking at her like, wasn't he married? And she was like, no, he got a divorce from what I heard. And she was like, well, he may not be single, girl. And she was like, I don't think this is a good idea. Like, why come on so strong? Like, can't you just work your way? And she was like, no, I'm going full-fledged. She said, I got it all set up. So she picked out the skimpy little outfit. I mean, it was raunchy, showing everything she got. But that's what she wants. She wants Dex to see how much she has grown over the years. So she tells her, what I'm going to do, I'm going to get a hotel room. I'm going to reserve the room for myself. And not only that, the room that Dex is going to have is going to be like a connected suite so that he can just easily come walk into my room and I can easily walk into his. She set everything up. But Dex is not going to show. When Dex knows that, okay, some people that was after Caitlin's father and can possibly be after Caitlin, he wants to stay close by her. So he tells his partner, Trevor Grant. I think that's his name. When he tells him, like, look, man, something came up. I know I was supposed to go out there to this meeting to meet with Corinthians. I want you to go ahead and go out there and take my place because I got to take care of some business here. He was like, okay, man, well, tell me a little bit about her. And he was just telling his partner, Trevor. He was like, I think you really gonna like her. Like, she's cute, she's about her business. She's a great conversationalist. She's friendly. You would like her. You gonna like working with her, or enjoy the evening discussing business with her. She's kind of like eye candy. He was like, okay, but he was kind of like the way that Dex was describing Corinthians. It kind of like he was making her seem like she was kind of attractive, but not all that attractive. So, of course, Trevor was expecting somebody modest or whatever, like, okay, all right looking. So, um, Trevor goes down there to this location to meet up with Corinthians. Now, Corinthians, she got the room or whatever, and she's waiting in the room. She bathed all up and smelling good, looking good or whatever, and she's waiting for Dex, and she's calling the front receptionist desk area saying, has Dex Madras checked in yet? And they said, oh, let me check. Oh, yes, he did check in. Now, Trevor did not feel like changing his name, so he just went ahead and kept the reservations as is, and he didn't feel like filling out all the paperwork and add his name and all that. He was tired. He had a long flight and he just wanted to get to the room. So he just said, yeah, I'm Dex, and they gave him the keys. He went up to the suite. So immediately when he goes up to the suite, he goes in the shower. But mind you, Corinthians just called and they informed her that, yes, Dex just checked in. So she was like, yes, now he's checked in. Let me go on over there. So while Trevor was in the shower, doing his little business, she comes plopping on in there in her skimpy outfit. Well, she had this silky robe on, but she was just, as soon as he stepped out of the shower, she was just going to, take the robe off and show everything that she's working with. So as Trevor was in the shower, he heard something, but he was like, man, that's probably room service trying to bring me something. So anyways, he steps out of the shower and he sees this woman in this robe, and then immediately she just takes it off. She's like facing towards the window, but she can hear that the shower went off, so she wants, when he comes out, to immediately see just her back view. So she undo her robe. He come out in his towel, and he said, what are you doing? Who are you and what you doing here? And she like turns around. She was like, oh my God, who are you? What are you doing here? Where's Dex? And he was like, no, you came in this room. Who are you? You got some explaining to do. And why are you looking for Dex? Like, I'm here filling in for Dex. I'm Trevor Grant. I'm work alongside him, and I handle all of his major business. I'm his partner. Now, who are you? You got some explaining to do. And she didn't want to explain anything because she was so mortified and embarrassed, because she was in a skimpy outfit. And she was like, wait, my head is spinning. I'm expecting Dex. You said you're his partner. He was like, yeah, he had something else to do. I'm here in his stead. And he was like, well, who are you? You have to explain who you are, or I'm going to go down and tell them that I have somebody up in this room who's not supposed to be up here. So she says, I'm Corinthians Avery. And he starts laughing. He was like, oh my God, you're Corinthians Avery? And in his mind, he was like, man, she's a lot finer than what Dex said. Like, he was like, man, he didn't mean to stare at her, but this girl's like in this sexy, skimpy outfit that's showing everything she got. And he's looking at her like, you must not know that Dex is married. And she said, excuse me, what? He's single. He was like, no, technically he's always been married. There's a screw up with some marriage contracts or something like that. And legally, they never got a divorce. And legally, they're still married. And he has a daughter. And so when she heard this, all her hopes and dreams just went down the drain because she had plans for this nigga. She was going to tell him that she loved him. She was in love with him. And she wanted to have a love romance relationship with him. And here it is. He's married and he has a daughter. So she kind of like passes out. And he catches her or whatever. And when she comes to, she was like, why is my robe off? Give me my robe. He was like, I tried to take the robe off to see if I could find any like number or somebody to call or something like that. And as she's looking at him and she's angry with him, she noticed how fine he is now. He's described with having this, I think he had a dimple and he had this nice smile and nice lips. And he's like dark complected. And he's tall. And she was just noticing like, I know I came here for Dex, but dang, this nigga fine. But she was still like, dang, I really wanted it to work with Dex. So, he was just saying, and also when I went into your pocket, these fell out and it was some condoms. And she was like, no, I don't need those. You can keep those. He was like, I will do. I'll keep it. And he was like, thanks. And he's just laughing at her and she's just irritated, but at the same token, she's attracted to him or whatnot. So she storms out of there and he was like, man, I got every intention to get to know her or whatever. So he's interested in her and he's trying to figure out why Dex didn't tell him that how fine she was. So, anyway, she storms out of there. They have their meeting and he's kind of like teasing her. He said, well, you know that, now we have like a secret. And she was like, what secret? He was like, well, your little secret with having a crush on Dex and knowing that he's married. And I'm not going to tell him. I'm not going to let him know what you did when you tried to come here to meet him and thinking you was going to get your man or whatever. And she was just angry at him. He said, don't worry. Now we got a secret amongst each other. And he was just letting her know that he finds her attractive in so many words. And she's trying to deny the attraction, but I think they're going to hook up. It didn't say anything more about them, but I think they're probably going to hook up. So, as time goes on, to make a long story short, eventually Dex gives in to Caitlin because Dex he wasn't aware that the people that was harassing her is the people that was going to be in network with him to take over the land that her father owned. And when he realized that, he's like, darn, I can't work with these people. These people are crooked and these are the same people that threatens Caitlin's father. So I'm not going to go into business with them, even though it was a major deal he was waiting on and he was wanting. He did get, and Caitlin was excited for him, but he had no idea that these people wanted to take over her father's land. So he ended up breaking the deal, but it just so happened Corinthians wanted to come by and speak with Caitlin. She just wanted to come face to face to see the woman that Dex ended up, being in love with or whatnot, or having a child with. So Corinthians comes by one day, and Caitlin was like, "Hi, how you doing?" She said, "I'm Corinthians," and she was like, "Well, Dex isn't here." She was like, "Actually, I'm not here for Dex, and I'm here to see you." And she was like, "Oh, okay, what's up?" And she was just she was stalling. She was like, "Me and Dex used to work together at Remington Oil, and we used to be good friends or whatever." And then Caitlin started looking at her like, this heifer needs to get to the point because I don't like where this is going. I know she ain't trying to tell me she's in love with my man or whatnot. And she just asked her, she was like, are you in love with him? Did y'all have something romantic? She was like, no, he never knew that I was in love with him. And he never knew about my romantic feelings. He always saw me as a sister, but I saw him as somebody else that I was interested in. But she said, now that I think about it, I'm over it. I actually got my eyes on somebody else now, so you don't have to worry about it. I just wanted to come here to see you. And now that I see you, you are drop dead gorgeous. Like, gosh, you're drop dead gorgeous. And also, I wanted to make you aware that I'm sorry that our business tried to take over your father's land. She was like, excuse me? She was like, oh, Dex didn't tell you that we're the ones that was in partnership to take over or was interested in your father's land? So Caitlin, she was a little angry that, like, no, Dex didn't tell me that. But she was like, oh my gosh, he turned down that major deal because of my feelings as far as how I would feel with my father's land being taken over for this major oil company thing. And she was like, man, he did all of that. And she was like, well, this time I'm going to prove to him that I really love him. She said, you know what? That won't be necessary. I'm going to talk to Dex and I'm going to let him go ahead and finalize that deal so he can get what he wanted, because I love him more than making him lose this major deal that he was been waiting for so long. So she ended up telling Dex that when Dex comes back home, he was like, how did you find out about that? And she was like, actually, Corinthians, Miss Avery, she came by here to tell me. He was like, oh man, like, I'm sorry, I just didn't want to tell you because I didn't want you to feel like I was trying to make you choose again. So I went ahead and did that because I really care. And she said, you know what? I know you were trying to protect me. She said, but I want you to know I love you more than that. And I'm not going to stand in the way of something you've been waiting for a very long time. So I want you to take over it. And when she did that, he just fell in love with her even more. And at that moment, he realized this woman really, she did love me all along. And she never stopped loving me. And he realized that the grudge he was holding was unnecessary. Yeah, he had some questions that needed to be answered, things left unsaid. But when he realized that this woman, let me get this straight, this woman told our daughter about me when she didn't have to. She, not only that, she names my daughter after my middle name. Not only that, she sets aside her feelings for her father's property for me. She chose me. So he realized that I really love this woman. And she was so happy when finally he let go of his grudge. He let down his guard and he gave her his heart. Something he said he would never do. He ended up giving her his heart again, his love, his trust, and all of that. So they are together now. Their baby daughter, she had asked her father for, she wanted a clubhouse to be built outside in their backyard. He honored that. And she also wanted a horse. Now, Dex's brother, Justin, he owns like a lot of livestock and stuff like that. And they have a lot of horses. So he ended up giving his little girl a horse as well. And their little daughter also requested to have a little brother or sister. And come to find out, like I think 6 months after he gave his heart back to Caitlin, excuse me, they were at this awards function or something like that. And Dex ended up winning or getting the Houston Businessman of the Year award. And so when he goes up there, he says his little speech or whatever. He's thanking everybody. He's thanking his wife or whatnot. And then he says, and I also have something else to celebrate. I'm going to be a father again. And so she's got the little daughter, their little daughter Jordan's got the brother or sister. I don't know what they're having, but I know that she's pregnant. So he announces that he's going to be a father again. So they live happily ever after. This story was really, really good. And I can't wait to see who they're going to talk about next in the next book. So, yeah, that is Brenda Jackson's book, Whispered Promises. This was really good, and it was a lot shorter than my last review. So I hope you guys enjoyed this story, and there will be more to come in this series. All right. Thank you guys for listening. Ciao.